I call to order the December 6th, 2023 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is the roll call.
Steve Clevenger.
Present.
Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Tim Vanderplatz.
Present.
Robert Novak.
Present.
Michelle Dennis.
Present.
Ed Butts.
Present.
Rabita Rajanikar.
Present.
Quorum present.
We have quorum present. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the October 25th, 2023 ABZA public hearing as submitted.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved as submitted. New business.
You ready for the public hearing announcement?
Oh, no, new business first.
Okay.
You have any new business?
No new business.
No new business? Then I'll take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated in the public hearing portion of each application be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the comprehensive plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendations on the applications be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. I would like to briefly describe our procedures for this evening. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We will ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we will ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, you will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. And we do have all 7 members present this evening. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. If you're not the petitioner, we do have a sign-in sheet at the corner there by the staff that we do ask you to sign in after you do speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And with it in mind, we'll hear the first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2131 Mauve Properties LLC. Petitioner and owner is requesting a special exception to legitimize an existing transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week for a maximum of 4 guests in an R1 zone. The property is located at 1014 South 20th Street and Lafayette, Fairfield 28 Southeast 23-4 with condition and commitments.
I second.
Thank you. And we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. Amanda Esposito, APC staff. This property, as mentioned in the agenda, is already operating as an Airbnb. This is located in Lafayette. It's in an R1 zone area, single family neighborhood. This request is for a maximum of 4 guests. You can see an aerial here of the property. This house is a rather small footprint. It's 800 square feet. It has 1 bedroom with 2 beds in it and 1 bathroom. They have been operating for approximately 2 years and just wish to legitimize that use at this point. It should be noted that the owner does live on property adjacent to this, just to the south. And according to their petition, they can monitor all activity at the house and have been doing so. This petition met all of the ballot findings, so we are recommending approval with condition and commitments. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. It's petitioner or his or her representative. Here, thank you.
Hi, I'm Bailey Walb. I am the owner of the house. I am also the host for Airbnb. My case is that this house has been in my family for 35 years. My parents owned it prior to me. My mom passed about 3 years ago, and during that time, it fell into disrepair. My dad couldn't take care of it. At that point, my husband and I saw an opportunity to kind of help us, and we purchased it from him. Since then, we have been operating it as a guest house for family and friends. We allow neighbors to also use it for their brothers, sisters, family that come in town to visit. That's our first priority of the house. When we realized how much needed to be repaired on the house, then we looked for a solution. That solution was to be able to Airbnb it on the open weekends, to be able to generate money to pay for these repairs. Like Amanda said, we have been operating for 2 years. During those 2 years, all of the funds from Airbnb have been regenerated back into the house to upgrade it. I've passed out papers to all of the board members. You can see how it began, and how we have made upgrades. Just between last year and this year, we've put almost $30,000 in repairs back into the house on the outside and the inside, which includes a new driveway. The driveway itself is 78 feet long. That's a big point for us because that means there's no traffic on the streets. The Airbnb doesn't generate that much traffic. That brings me kind of to my next point, because it's only about 800 square feet. We really only get 1 to 2 people. Most of the time it's a travel nurse or a Purdue professor. Usually it's just 1 or 2 cars in the driveway. The size of it deters any kind of parties, barbecues happening. I think the final update that we did to the outside was the fence that you see on the right side. And that was just because that was the one neighbor. We live on the left side and we don't feel like we need privacy, but we put privacy on the right side for our neighbor just to be considerate. Because we live on the left, then we're able to monitor everything that happens. We message the guests if there's anything that we see out of line from our rules that are listed very clearly on our Airbnb listing. And to my knowledge, nobody in the neighborhood has had any issues with it, and they all use it and love it. That's all.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good evening, Brian Baker, 1020 South 20th Street would be the next house across the alley from Bailey and Eric. Been in the neighborhood for about 25 years and have watched the family and find them to be just the most delightful neighbors anybody could ever want to have. When the transaction took place between dad and daughter and she purchased the property, there's just been a steady improvement. Was a nice little property to begin with, but hard to rent because of the size of it. The solution that she's come up with has really worked very, very nicely. And the money and the time and effort that they put into it, just second to none. I'm gonna be honest with you, I had no idea it was an Airbnb. And they've had many, many guests, and I live 2 doors away. So I can assure you that if this is the direction that we can go, this is a very good direction, a very good solution, and very welcome in my neighborhood. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if you could remember to sign in, please. Sure. Up here at the desk. And next in favor, please.
Good evening. My name is Craig Martin. I live at 1013 South 20th, directly across the street. So this is basically the view from my front window. And we have a view then of the property day and night and have for since 2018. And I will concur that the improvements have been, very welcome over the last several years. They've done a terrific job. And we have indeed noticed people coming and going, obviously on a regular basis, almost daily sometimes. Never have experienced any issues in terms of volume, excessive car traffic, excessive number of guests crowding into the house, or anything that you might anticipate there. If you were looking for the worst case scenarios, we've never experienced any of that. We've haven't had nothing but, they've always been very polite. They've come and gone, never been any trash left, no cars in the street. And as she pointed out, the driveway has just recently been repaved, and in the full length of it, and it's a great accommodation. And I'm trying to anticipate any other questions you might have, but as I say, we watch the house day and night because we just look out the front window, and I've never seen any problem, experienced anything at all. So I just wanted to assure you of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor.
Good evening, Brandy Christensen, 2004 Central Street, and I am probably catty corner, maybe 2 houses down. I don't want to reiterate what everyone else has said. Obviously, this is a good family, good neighborhood. We've had the ability to use the house for extra housing for when my parents visit, and that's been wonderful. But as you can hear, the neighborhood, we're all looking out for each other. I don't anticipate, haven't had any issues. And if I did, I know I could immediately go right across the street and knock on the door. So we're as residents, we are in favor of this as well. So I will now sign in.
Thank you. Speaking in favor.
Hello, my name is Eric Bald. Bailey is my wife, so I live obviously next door. I help maintain the house, so pretty much any repairs, any minor repairs, we do ourselves. I take care of the yard, the backyard. We have a vegetable garden in the backyard, so we're actually back there quite often, even when we have guests there. There's really not much left to add that hasn't already been said. So yes, I would just like to point out that we've kind of established a good track record because we already have been operating. Mostly the reason that we didn't apply for this sooner was because we simply just didn't know. When we looked into this in the beginning, we did some quick research, but we didn't use the keyword transient housing. So nothing showed up as a requirement. So we thought we were okay and we didn't need to do any kind of zoning things. It actually wasn't until maybe a month ago, I saw an article in the Journal and Courier about this meeting, and it was people requesting exemptions. So then I started to research. I'm like, oh, we should have done that. So that's why we started this whole process. It's not that we were trying to avoid it. It was just a simple overlook. So yeah, so I don't have anything else to add. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you. Speaking in favor. Anyone's wanting to speak in opposition? Please come on up.
Hello, my name's William Tilford. I live at 809 South 20th Street, a couple blocks down. After reading the report and hearing the testimony, I'm a little less concerned than I was when I walked in the door, but I do still have a pointed question. The picture on my block isn't quite as rosy. We've become, between drugs and domestics and other odds and ends, kind of a high traffic area for the police. And I'm not here about that, except insofar as it connects with this. If I understand correctly, this has been operating for a while, and I have no reason to believe that this is responsible for what I'm seeing. but I am concerned about the mental picture I'm forming if we do get more strangers in the mix with what our life is like right now. So I guess I have a public question toward the owner regarding if this is legitimized. What does she envision happening with her clientele? Will it increase? Will it be more strangers, et cetera? And if she could expand on that a little bit, maybe I'll walk out of here feeling okay.
Thank you.
I come back up for that.
You'll have a chance to rebut in a minute. Anyone else speaking in opposition?
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street, West Lafayette. So we heard tonight, not a lot of issues from the immediate nuisance side. However, from the deviation from the intended purposes of R1U being long-term single-family dwellings, that is still a concern. So to that end, I have a petition here with 159 signatures. I'll read that into the record. We, the undersigned, are opposed to allowing a transient guest house at 1014 South 20th Street in Lafayette. We find the proposed special exception to deviate from existing zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house at this location in Lafayette materially and permanently injure the other property and uses in the same zoning district and vicinity, along with subverting the R1 purposes of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. R1's intent, as defined in the UZO, is long-term single-family dwellings, not house hotels or motels. Our request to deny the special exception is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding these current and future uses in the R1 zone properties in the neighborhood. So to prevent the further erosion of the neighborhood's intended purpose and to maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and families, voting against this special exception is reasonable and justified. So again, the owner sounds great. The current people operating and then using it for over 2 years now. No immediate nuisance, but however, this is a trend in Tippecanoe County, and it's not helping the neighborhoods. It's not helping the neighbors. That's great. You're able to use the money generated through this process to reinvest in the house. However, operating in a residential area for this purpose does go against the UZO in the opinion of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak in opposition? You have a chance to rebut.
I would like to address the first person. I think that legitimizing the property is not going to change the clientele. Before I learned that I had to rezone the property, it was legitimate to me. So that was the extent. And also, like I said, first and foremost, it's used as a guest house for family and friends. I don't plan on packing as many people in there through Airbnb as I can. Because we don't take any income from the house, it's able to support itself if it needs to sit for a couple of days. So I don't plan on more traffic coming through now that it's legit, if it becomes legitimized. The second person that talked about the value to the neighborhood, I honestly think that it brings more value to our specific neighborhood. Our neighborhood's like a giant family. We all know each other. We all hang out together. We all watch out for the neighborhood. This house specifically, because it's been in my family, I have seen the different renters coming through, and it wasn't a good sight for most of them. I think that because of the size of the house, it also deters a lot of people from wanting to rent it. I mean, I don't know anyone that can squeeze family of 4, family of 5 into a 750, 800 square foot house. That's just too small. So it's very hard to rent long-term. That's why this seems to be the best option for the size of the house. And also the neighborhood loves it. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? Yes, I do have a question. Are the condition and commitments okay with you? And you do have some proposed commitments that we have noted in the staff report.
Yeah.
mean, those are okay with you?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The condition and commitments, and it actually has petitioner proposed commitments as well. And the condition is a permit to operate a transient guest house must be obtained from the administrative officer of the city of Lafayette, which is required. And commitments is occupancy shall be limited to 4 guests with no more than 3 unrelated guests at any given time. And the dwelling may only be reserved for a single booking at any given time. And then there's 2 petitioner proposed commitments, one saying no pets, and the other says only parties or gatherings of 10 or less people are allowed, and the guests must notify a host ahead of time. I'm assuming when you say gatherings of 10 or less, that is during the day, and that you're only
Yes.
having 4 guests that would actually spend the night.
Correct,
maximum.
yeah. So we only allow up to 4 guests spending the night sleeping in the house. We do allow up to 10, which includes the 4 that are already staying there. We do get a lot of Purdue alumni coming back into town, and they just want a place to kind of like sit out in the backyard, have a barbecue. But if there's 4 of them already, that only leaves 6 more slots. Because we're next door, we monitor it. To be truthful, there was one situation where they had upwards of maybe 15 people total, and we immediately messaged them, told them that everyone had to leave because they're breaking a rule. I don't even know that any of the neighbors knew that happens, because we were able to quickly message them and say, you're breaking the rules, shut it down. So yeah, we hold strong to those rules. We don't allow pets. It wrecks the house with people coming in and out. It doesn't make sense. So yes, we will hold true to those rules if it becomes legitimized.
Thank you. And do we need to do anything with the petitioner proposed commitments, or are those automatically included?
They're part of the report and
They're part of the
that's what we're
report.
voting on
Okay,
with those conditions.
thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
We have 7 ballots cast, 7 in favor.
That special exception has been granted. And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2132, Lois Jacquez, Canaan Properties LLC. Petitioner and owner is requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 6 guests in an R1B zone. Property is located at 607 North 28th Street in Lafayette, Fairfield Township, Section 22 Southwest, 23-4, with condition and commitments.
I second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
John Burns
Thank
with
you,
the
John.
Area Plan Commission. So this request for a transient guest house, like you said, is located on North 28th Street between Ferry and Union Streets. See an aerial here, and if you look, this is very much a residential area. And if we look at the overhead of the property here, we can see that it's a small house with 3 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. Petitioners are proposing to house up to 6 transient guests. The driveway in the house, including the 1-car garage, are capable of supporting the 3 cars that guests would need to park in. Staff is recommending approval with the standard conditions and commitments, as well as the petitioner proposed commitments, which are 1, no parties or gathering, 2, no pets, 3, bookings must made by person at least 25 years of age, and 4, quiet hours between 10 p.m. and 8 p.m. daily. 8 a.m. daily.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
I'm Jessica Colasso. I'm representing my mom, Lois Jaquist. First of all, thank you for letting me speak. This home has been in my family for over 40 years. It belonged to my paternal grandparents, and then my father inherited the property when they passed away. After that, it was rented out, eventually housing students in PhD studies at Purdue. We have spent the last year and a half, now that my father passed away and my mom has taken ownership of the property. It has been empty for about 2 years now, and we have spent the last year and a half rehabilitating it. We put about $80,000 worth of work into it to get it back up and running, as it was in quite a bit of disrepair. And then we upgraded it additionally as my mother is aging and sees it as a space that she would perhaps live in as she got older, because it is a 1-story residence and her current residence is 2 stories. Our primary goal with this property is to keep it for my mother and to also use it for friends and family who visit in town. Because of this need for flexibility, and having it renting over a long period, as we did in the past, isn't ideal for us any longer. Our main goal is to keep it for friends and family. Our secondary goal is to offer it to the community as a rental property in short terms. But we would like to be able to fill gaps when we have renters that are coming in for less than 30 days. So for instance, we just had the holidays. We had family in town. We have more holidays coming up. We have family in town. We have a couple weeks that the house is empty and could be available, but we're not permitted to. After the holidays, we foresee ourselves renting for 2 to 3 months at a time, primarily focusing on the relationships that we have built with some of the departments at Purdue and with the medical staff who uses traveling nurses. In order to reassure people who are concerned about noise, parties, unexpected strangers coming into the neighborhood, we don't want that for our business either. We love the neighborhood and we love the community. So some things that we've done to assure that we have good renters coming into our property and into the neighborhood is that we have set up the platform so that we don't take any auto bookings. So not anyone can just click and book. We have to vet the booker, the booking first, and we can actually interview any guests who might be coming in before we decide to accept them as a guest. We did not put any outside furniture or amenities to encourage barbecues or gatherings. We've really focused on creating a quiet, restful space where people like business travelers can come and seek rest. As we said, no one younger than 25, no pets. And let me see if I had any other thing in my great notes here. We just want to prioritize longer stays over shorter. And that's pretty much sums it up for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Hi, I'm Nancy Wagner. I live at 609 North 28th Street, just north of there. Me and my family have owned our home for 65 years. My parents knew her grandparents. I've taken over my house since my parents have passed away. So we've kind of jockeyed different generations being next door neighbors. In the past, when they have rented the house to Purdue University, it's always been a pleasant experience who they've rented to. They've maintained the property in the last 2 years since the last renter moved out. I've witnessed all the improvements that they've made to the property. In fact, Lois has invited me over several times to take tours of the house to see the progress, and very impressed with it. It's like a brand new house inside. I did have some concerns prior to this meeting, but reading over the papers and just knowing the family like I do, as long as all of the guidelines are met, I don't have any problems. In fact, Lois has assured me that if I have any questions or concerns, I've got her text and not to hesitate to let her know. Recently, when they have had guests in the house, I would not have known anybody was there unless I saw the cars in the driveway. So it's not been a problem. We are a very quiet, we used to be a family neighborhood. Now it's more a lot of retired people. But I really, as long as the guidelines are met and enforced, I don't see a problem with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition?
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Brent Clary, C-L-A-R-Y. I live at 3820 Old Farm Road. I have lived in Lafayette since I was born. I practiced law here for my entire career through what is now BB&C. It was Bennett, Benning, and Clary when I practiced there. During the course of my practice, I managed properties from time to time. Plus, our family has owned the property located at 601, 603 North 28th, has owned that property since the early 60s. And I won't say that I was the one that was most involved in management of that for many years. My father, who obtained it, did until he passed away in 1974, the year I got out of law school. Then my brother and mother managed it until around the early or mid 1990s when I started helping take care of it. And I've done it since then. But I have no bad experiences with the people asking for this petition. Do not get me wrong on that. I don't think they are bad people. I don't think that they have done a terrible job of taking care of their property. In fact, the things I remember about it were management deals that I helped them. There was some growth of trees and stuff between the properties, and I did the work, and they gave me lemonade and stuff. I mean, it was one of those kinds of things. There was no problem. My problem is more basic than that, I think. And that is throughout my career, and certainly with regard to this, first of all, I've never had any difficulty finding tenants in our property that are either well employed by one of the many businesses in Lafayette or Purdue University or in the medical profession. It used to be, we were so close to a home hospital, we had tenants that were tied to the hospital. But I've never had any difficulty getting good tenants, qualified tenants. And my experience as an attorney when I did it with my own properties and others is the real simple formula is if you want fewer problems, you have longer term tenants, longer term relationships, because people with long-term relationships have something to lose. And I just have never had a feeling that I needed short-term organizations or short-term deals to keep stuff rented there. It's been a very stable neighborhood. Yes, the just like my father, who has been passed away for many, many years, that first obtained it for our family. But the point is, this has been a very stable, long-term sort of neighborhood. And I feel that anything that this body does to change that character of the neighborhood is a mistake. As I say, I'm not knocking these people at all. They're good people. They take good care of it, but they don't have any history of taking care of a property the way they're talking about in this neighborhood. It is as it is. So for those reasons, I think that their petition should be refused and denied. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Crystal Roderick and I live at 611 North 28th Street. I'm 2 houses down from this house. I'm a homeowner on the same block as the petitioned house on North 28th Street. I've grown up on the street and have lived on the street for 38 years of my life. There's a lot of elderly, including some of my own family on this block, along with families with small children. From Brown Street to Elizabeth Street, the 600 block of North 28th Street is majority owner occupied. This would be the first transient house in the neighborhood that I am aware of and would cause a lot of stress on the families currently owning property on this block and surrounding streets. I maintain my property to the best of my means while being the best neighbor I can be. I also have comfort in knowing that the people around me are long-term owners with the same intention. This property at 607 North 28th Street does not share the same focus. I feel their sole purpose is money. By allowing them to rent out their home for a few days at a time to an outside company that has no on-site commitment is compromising our area. Do these outside companies truly care who you host as long as they get a cut? Background checks may or may not be performed, and that would only include the guest that has an account with these outside companies. What about other listing sites such as Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, who do not provide any type of background checks? What about the guests they are bringing with them that will be staying in the house? How can anyone determine if that guest is a criminal and might perform criminal activities inside or outside of the house or within the neighborhood? This property is also 200 feet from Lafayette Christian School, 800 feet from Sunnyside Intermediate, with both schools combined enrollment of roughly 1,300 small children. There are many potential problems that could arise by renting this house out for days at a time, all of which cannot be controlled by the homeowner with no on-site host. I have no disbelief that the interior renovated house will be rented out short-term. My question is to whom? The interior of the house may be renovated to appeal to whomever decides to book this property. However, if the intention of the homeowner is to keep the integrity of the neighborhood, why has there been no upkeep on the outside of the property for several years? There is what appears to be dead trees, brush, an overgrown garden, no downspouts, and no curb appeal has been added, only signifying more the sole intention, money. While the intentions may be good, these are only intentions. They cannot completely control the guests and monitor their behavior. Although fire pits, stereo equipment, or alcohol are not provided, they cannot control if the guest brings any of those items with them, including portable loudspeakers. They cannot control if a guest will be going outside to smoke or use alcohol or drugs that they brought with them at all hours of the day or night. They cannot control all guests that will be visiting or staying at the house. They cannot control their check-in times, as someone may have a travel delay out of their control. They cannot control what time or hours of the day they will be going from that house, which in turn, they cannot control their quiet hours listed. They cannot control if 6 guests bring 6 different cars. They simply cannot control all behavior that may take place. These intentions cannot be backed without person-to-person interaction, which the owner will not have. This is no benefit to our neighborhood, only a constant worry of who is next door and what we will wake up to. This is a residential area with people taking comfort in knowing their neighbors. We are a close-knit neighborhood, constantly keeping an eye out for each other, and we would now be losing a neighbor only to be replaced by unknown strangers coming and going. I strongly oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
My name is Joe Merrill, and I live at 2904 Brown Street. Lived in the neighborhood for around about 30 years. I'm not opposed to someone renting their house. We have several rentals in the neighborhood. I am opposed to having a transient house there with people coming in and out. So yeah, that is I'm opposed to that. And also, I'm kind of wondering, say a year from now, they get tired of having it as a transient house, and they decide to sell it. Then the control of it is to somebody else, either a big company, and all they're going to do is just turn it for profit. That's all. I'm opposed to the turning it as a transient house.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street. As we heard before us, it sounds like a lot of the concerns deal with the deviation away from the intended use of an R1 zone property. And because of that, we had those 159 people sign the petition that I'll read in again. But before I do, with that, as we heard, similar to the first one, we hear a lot about the immediate nuisances that can happen, but it sounds like nothing is being discussed either by the petitioner or this particular board about the intended purposes of neighborhoods in those R1 zone properties. And so there's been an investment here However, it's been mainly on the interior that we heard earlier. And then those people too, before had mentioned that it's very easy to rent in this particular area and that a short-term rental doesn't fit in with the character of the neighborhood. Also, I don't believe this has any condition for dissolving the special exception as an accommodation in there. And so that's not being considered as well. And we are talking about not the property owner, but the property itself getting the special exception. So with that, I'll read the petition. We, the undersigned, are opposed to allowing a transient guest house at 607 North 28th Street in Lafayette. We find the proposed special exception to deviate from existing zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house at this location in Lafayette materially and permanently injures the other property and uses in the same zoning district and vicinity, along with subverting the R1B purposes of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. R1B's intent is long-term, single-family dwellings, not house, hotels, motels. Our request to deny the special exception is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding safety, traffic, noise, lighting, and the current and future uses of R1B zone properties in the neighborhood. To prevent the erosion of our neighborhoods in Tippecanoe County and to maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and families, voting against the special exception is reasonable and justified. And along with that, we heard similar arguments previously where people want maybe a parent or a relative to move in the future, and this is just a stopgap in order to have income. However, that's not germane to the conversation that we're having here. We're talking about a property deviating from the intended uses in the Unified Zoning Ordinance. Nothing precludes this particular property owner from allowing their friends to stay there, allowing their family to stay there. They can even let strangers stay there. However, the difference is they can't charge them rent. That's what puts them in this kind of classification. And so if you can't afford this particular home without having it as a transient guest house, then one must either pursue long-term rentals or be able to sell it in order to accommodate any mortgage or debt that's undergone that particular property. And then two, it was brought up before that it's hard to manage those long-term rentals compared to short-term rentals. However, people have been doing that, as we heard from the first gentleman, for decades in the community. So with that, I urge you to vote against the special exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition?
My name is Dr. Thelma Snuggs, and I live at 2914 Brown Street. And I am in opposition to transient housing because I think that it would adversely affect the stability of the neighborhood. And having strange people coming in, we've already have so many apartment complexes you built that really change the whole atmosphere of the community. And this would just be another blow against the community.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Phyllis Merrill, 2904 Brown Street. Lived there for 34 years. It's been a wonderful neighborhood. We've enjoyed being there. I find it difficult to fathom the idea that it would be difficult in today's economy and the way that rentals are in Lafayette, that they're having a difficulty doing a long-term rental with being there such a housing shortage and what rents are going for in the area. I find it difficult to say that the only way to take care of this house is with a short term. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Keller. I live at 626 North 28th Street. And for a lot of the previous reasons why, which I'm not going to repeat, I am opposed to the movement to move forward as a transitional or transient housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak in opposition? Hearing none, like a chance to rebut.
First,
Thank you for all the commentary, like both for and against. It helps us to know what the neighborhood wants, and that is important to us. We are not an outside company. Our property has been put into an LLC in order to protect our investment. But we live 5 minutes down the street at 18th Street in Greenbush, and I daily make my way to the property to check on it, to maintain it. My daughter goes to Sunnyside Middle School, which is right down the way. And we do value this property very, very much. And it is a legacy property in our family's eyes. It will not be sold. We own it outright. There's no lien or mortgage or anything on it. We've paid for the renovations outright. So we're not here to try to like make up for a debt that we have caused. We are trying to preserve an asset in our family and also preserve a piece of the community, that we see this as a solution that's win-win for everyone. We want to make it win-win for the people who are opposing it as well, which is why we have taken a lot of steps to make sure that we're listening and that and that we are providing ways in which we can vet our guests, because we also do not want the things that people are concerned about happening in that neighborhood or in our property. It's our home. So we take it very seriously. I have a background in hospitality. I know what we are getting into. I'm actually managing the property, and I don't do anything but real estate and real estate oversight as my career. So I do feel like if this isn't something we're just setting up and allowing the doors to open, hoping to make a quick dollar. Our main focus, as I said before, is a longer term, short-term rental, so a midterm rental, which would be 30 days or more, and this would fill some gaps where they needed. For instance, we had a director from the theater department at Purdue who wanted to rent our space, but could only rent it for 2 weeks because she was only in town to direct the opening of the show for that long. I couldn't rent it to her legally without the permit to do that. We'd like to continue to be an asset to the Purdue Theater Department in that respect, but we would have had to deny her because we can't take that legally, and we want to make sure we're doing what the city asks us to do. And in regards to the upgrading for the outside, we prioritized painting it first, and then we started on the interior. We had weddings, we had many family events this summer and into the holidays that made us prioritize that. And that is very much on our next steps of care, but we wanted to be able to accommodate our family first. I just want to make sure I was listening to everyone that was saying it's not difficult for us to find long-term rental. It simply just doesn't work for the intention of what's best for our purposes as a family. Finally, let me see if there's anything I'm not reassuring you with. Oh, finally, we have put a lock on the front door that reaches my phone. So entry and exits, I see them on my phone. I have notifications. So if there was a lot of door opening and shutting, that would be alarming to me. And I would make my way immediately to the property and investigate what was going on to see if there was a party going on, a gathering, or someone breaking our house rules. If our house rules are being broken, I have no problem enforcing them and asking a guest to leave immediately. It's very, very important to my mother, myself, and our family that we respect the neighborhood, we honor its people, and that we also continue the legacy of this investment with our family. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? Rabita?
Yeah. Thank you for your clarification. So as I understand clearly, you are hoping to be flexible with this property.
Yes.
Using it for family and also using it for income generation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that something they can do once the special exception is granted? Can they use it flexibly for both purposes?
Yes, longer term renters are allowed by right in this zoning district, so they can do that at any time. If the short term rent ceases for a period of a year or more, then the special exception would cease to be valid. So they have to at least do the short term rent once in every calendar year.
I also see the commitment for hours of operation from 10. So you're hoping that the events or activities of the group location would be seized at 10 p.m. and open up at 8 a.m. Is that correct?
Correct.
Will that
That's the quiet hours.
Quiet
Yeah,
hours.
quite out.
Right.
will that be impacted while you are using the property for family activities? I'm hoping for clarification here.
I think, I mean, whatever after, like, we had family in town recently, and we had an indoor gathering of it wasn't larger than like 10 people. So it was like my immediate family of 5 people. We had a family dinner. And I think there were 5 guests who stayed the night, and then my 5-member family joined them during the day and had a dinner inside the house. And then we left. So that was for us. That would not be something we would allow our guests to facilitate during that time. We really see it as a place where it's like a hotel room. You come, you sleep, you shower, you rest, you can cook a meal, you can invite a friend over to enjoy the meal, but we do not encourage any type of gatherings or parties. That's not what we want our property to be used for at all.
How do you plan to monitor that?
First, by vetting guests, by asking people what their purpose is of their travel. So the way Airbnb works, from what I've studied and understand, and as I've begun to set it up in anticipation of being able to use this permit, is that you can either select to have immediate occupancy, or you can basically someone, if they want to rent your space, they can put in a request. I receive that request, and then I can either ask them various questions. I could send them a survey. I could ask, what's the nature of your travel? What do you plan to do while you're in town? And based on their answers, I can decide if they're a match for our property. So I'm not just letting someone, like the other option is they can pick a booking date of 3 days or more. And that once they click that they want to book, it's automatically booked unless I unbook them. This way it's reserved, but I have to approve the reservation. So my goal is, when I get a reservation like that, is to make contact with the potential guest and ask various questions so that I get an idea if they're a match for our property. And a match would be someone coming in for business travel, someone coming in for, medical work. Travel nurses are very easy guests to find who would match someone who would be right for our property. And that's our goal, is to continue forging those relationships with businesses in the medical and the research field at Purdue, in the theater department where my husband is involved, and to continue creating guests that will become repeat guests, so that we do not have to use the short-term rental platforms as often, and that we eventually can just move to direct booking, where we're using repeat guests and people that we can vet very closely. Because as I said before, we've invested a good amount of time and money and our hearts into this space. It's a home. We've made a home for my mother as well as the community, and we want to put it to use that way.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we've got a ballot.
Seven ballots cast, 7 yes votes.
That special exception is approved. And we'll hear the next item, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2133, Shy Cantor. Petitioner and owners requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 6 guests in an R1 zone. properties located at 2215 Carlisle Road, West Lafayette. Wabash 7, Southwest 23-4 with condition and commitments.
I second.
Thank you. And we'll hear from staff, please. Amanda?
This case cannot be heard. They had a filing deficiency.
Okay. We move to continue it to, or
It would need to be continued to the January hearing. It was missing a requirement for being heard. It had a filing deficiency.
it's not, the petitioner did show up and they still had a filing deficiency, so it's not dismissed. It actually needs to be continued.
Correct.
And I'll entertain that motion.
So I move that we continue BZA 2133 Shy Cantor. That would be the January 24th, 2024 meeting.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. If you're here for BZA 2133 Shy Cantor, that will be heard next month, January 24th, 2024. Most likely that'll be in the county office building, at 6 o'clock. So that will not be heard today.
The reason for why it's being delayed wasn't heard back here. Can you?
The reason was that there was a deficiency and they had not turned all their paperwork in, I believe is what happened. So we cannot hear it without all the paperwork being turned in.
Thank you.
So it has to be continued. With that, we'll go ahead and hear the next two cases.
I move to hear together and vote on separately BZA 2134, Jeremy Du Bois, petitioner with consent of the owner and represented by John Schrader of Ball Eggleston PC, is requesting a variance to reduce the south side setback for outside storage of materials and equipment from the required 100 feet to 30 feet for uses falling under SIC 15 and 17 in an A zone. The 2.284 acre property is located at 6400 Forest Grove Lane in Wheel Township, Section 26, Northwest 22-4, UZO 4-4-11, and BZA 2128. Jeremy Du Bois, petitioner with consent of the owner and represented by John Schrader, Ball Eggleston PC, is requesting a special exception to legitimize an existing special trade contractor, SIC 17, specifically for laying cable in an A zone operating during daylight hours from March through October and 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., November through February, Monday through Friday. The 2.284 acre property is located at 6400 Forest Grove Lane and Wheel 26 Northwest 22-4, continued from the September 27th ABZA hearing at petitioner's request. That was our first continuance.
I second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please, Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you, David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. As Stephen and Gary noted, I want to present on two cases because they're tandemed, they're linked, but they will require two separate votes. They are BZA 2134 and BZA 2128. 2134 is the variance request and BZA 2128 is the special exception request. We'll discuss each of them in turn here. The site you see here on the zoning map in front of you, it's circled in black, squared in black. It is a 2.28 acre A-zoned lot in the Forest Grove neighborhood. A is agricultural, so it's zoned for agriculture. And as you can see, all of the surrounding zoning for quite a distance in all directions is A as well. This is an 11 lot neighborhood served by Forest Grove Lane, which is a private graveled, approximately 13-foot wide gravel lane that stretches northward and provides access to all of the lots from the public right of way. The property was issued a zoning violation in July of this year. We received a complaint from a neighbor, sent out an inspector who verified that there was in fact a use taking place on site, which is not allowed by right in the ordinance. Specifically, there's a cabling contractor that is being run from the property, and that is not allowed by right in the A zone, but it is allowed by special exception. So in an effort to rectify the zoning violation, the petitioner has a few options, one of which is to stop whatever it is he's doing that incurred the violation. Then another is to file whatever land use petitions are necessary to legally establish it. So that's the route that they've taken. They filed the special exception, and then after some review, staff determined that this variance is also necessary. So you have both of them before you. Looking at the scene in front of you, the property has a large single-family dwelling and then a large pole barn behind it. And that pole barn is accessed by a gravel area. Couple snapshots in time. This is from November 2 years ago. And you can see that the property was developed thusly. And then about a year later, they built the gravel parking area. And you can see that the vehicles and other accoutrements associated with the business are now visible on the site. And if you take a little bit of a closer look, you can see the bucket trucks. You can see some spools associated with the cabling activity and some trailers and some additional commercial vehicles. And then there's a dumpster in front of the house that's used, a commercial dumpster, and then another container that contains commercial waste right next to it. Speak real quickly about the variance. For contractor use on A zone property, any outdoor storage area needs to provide at least 100-foot setback to side lot lines. And this is a 200-foot wide lot, so by definition, it can't meet that requirement. And in fact, as you can see in this diagram here, the parking lot, which is fleshed in yellow, provides just a 30-foot setback. So it's a 70-foot deficit from what would be required by ordinance. This is a photograph from the site taken about a month ago. And you can see the trucks with the bucket attachments on property. You can see some of the spools and then the commercial dumpster in front of the house. And then just to the left of it is a smaller dumpster that contains some kind of scrap or waste associated with the business. In the background, you see the pole barn. That's another look at the specific vehicles that are kept on site. Petitioner counsel has noted that the proprietor of the business lives in the house, does not own the house, but he lives in the house with his uncle, who is the owner of the property. And it's understood from the petition materials that employees will drive to the site, will park their cars there, and then we'll take the trucks out on the job. Then at the end of the day, drive back, return the trucks, take their personal passenger vehicles back home. With regards to the variance, we simply don't see that it meets the findings that are required. I think that the fact that the site, by definition, cannot meet the variance requirement because it's just not wide enough to allow for it to accomplish 100-foot setback for parking area is just indication of the fact that it's being used too intensively for this particular use. And there is no unusual or unnecessary hardship associated here. The property can be used in the manner for which it is zoned, which is it can be used residentially in the same way that all of its neighboring properties are being used. They're all similar size and form, similarly developed, and it has historically been used residentially. So there's no unusual or necessary hardship that would grant or would warrant the grant of the variance request. And then with regard to the special exception, we also don't think that it meets that set of findings. In particular, we anticipate there'd be a compromise to the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the community as the location of a heavier commercial contractor in the midst of a very low density rural residential neighborhood would be conspicuously inappropriate and violate the general purposes of the zoning ordinance. You might remark that in a area that's rural, has large lots, that maybe any one of these components of the business by itself could be considered not terribly disagreeable. But if you consider the commercial vehicle storage, the commercial dumpster, the management of waste outside, presence of the trailers, the spools, which are stored outdoors, employee parking, the truck traffic on a private narrow lane, which is not built or equipped or intended for truck traffic of a commercial variety. If you consider the sum of its parts, it's just too much to be supportable by staff. And so we are recommending denial of both the variance and the special exception request. I will note that as you vote, the variance should be voted on first. Part of the findings of the special exception, it cannot even be voted upon unless all of the terms of the ordinance are met, and all of the terms of the ordinance would not be met unless the variance is granted. So please vote on the variance first, and if that is approved, then you would vote on the special exception. If the variance is denied, then you would simply dismiss the special exception. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Good evening. My name is John Schrader from Ball Eggleston at 201 Main Street. I am here on behalf of the petitioner, Jeremy DuBois. Purpose of this petition is to allow Jeremy DuBois to park these vehicles on site, on the site that he also lives on. The vehicles in question are F-350 and Ford F-350 and Ford E-350 vehicles with bucket attachments on it. The feature that distinguishes them from consumer vehicles is the bucket attachments. The size of them and the type of engine they use would, albeit on the larger side of a consumer vehicle, but would still be typical for a consumer vehicle that would be used, especially those that are commonly used with people who live in more rural areas. It is our position that this will not subvert the general purpose of the uniform zoning ordinance, will not be harmful to the general health, safety, and welfare of the community, and that this board should vote in favor to approve both the variance and the special exception. Jeremy has lived on this property with his family and his uncle for the last year and a half. If he thought this was harmful for residential use, he wouldn't be doing this on a site that he also lived on. The 30-foot setback is, requires the vehicles to be put on the parking lot. There still is a buffer yard required between him and his neighbors. The garbage dumpster that was mentioned, he uses that for his personal use. That is generally not part of his contracting operation. And the cables seen are also not a permanent part of the business. Those have since been removed. I spoke with my client before this meeting. Those are no longer on site. Again, the purpose of this is to allow Jeremy to keep vehicles that are used in his business on site. They're retrieved in the morning, brought back at the end of the day. They are of similar size to individual consumer vehicles, and they are not a drastic increase in the use that is allowed by right on an A lot. And for these reasons, I recommend that the board vote in favor of the variance and petition, special exception. Thank you. Are there any questions?
We may have some for you in a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. Speaking in opposition to the petition.
My name is Ron Hardesty. Excuse me.
No problem.
My wife and I have lived in the Forest Grove addition for 30 years. We live at 6412 Forest Grove Lane. We were the third house to build in this neighborhood. I would like to start out by saying I cannot tell you how many hours of sleep I have lost and how much stress this put on my wife and I over the requests for the zoning variance BZA 2134 and BZA 2128. If they are approved, it will not only dramatically reduce the value of our homes, but all the homes located in the neighborhood and make it even harder to sell them. Our property is located next to 6400 Forest Grove Lane on the south side. So we are one of the homes that will be affected most by the setback variance. I would also like to point out an error on BZA 2134 request. All the residents in the Forest Grove addition are not on city water, but on private individual wells. As you can see in the pictures, the service trucks and worker cars are older vehicles. If these service trucks or vehicles that are placed on the property leak hydraulic fluids or other fluids, it could leach down into the wells and contaminate them. There are also spools of wire scattered around the property that could potentially have chemicals production on them. When we had our house built and they were drilling our well, they hit water at 25 feet. So these contaminants would not need to travel far to affect our wells. Since the septic field for 6400 Forest Grove Lane is located on the north side of the pole barn and a well is located between the house and the barn, they have no other option other than driving down the south side of the pole barn within 3 feet of our property line to access the material on the back of the property. The two bottom pictures that were just taken yesterday at 12:05 are evidence of this. You can see the tire tracks in these pictures where they have been driving constantly next to our property, throwing used materials on a trailer, loading the wire spools scattered throughout the yard, and dumping the wire spools in the yard when they are empty. If they continue to do this, when the snow and the spring rains come, they will be dragging mud out on the lane and to the front of our neighborhood. This happened when they were building our house. We had to pay $5,000 to have gravel hauled in and have it graded to fix the damage done to the builders by the builders. When this happens, is a business owner going to be responsible for repairs, or are all the homeowners going to have to pay to have the repair done? To date, we have had one of the vehicles left in the yard, jacked up with the front tires off for 2 months before it was finally removed. As you can also see in the pictures, we have situations where the trucks with the spool trailers have been parked so close to our property and have the LED light warning lights left on, causing them to flash continually on and off. Reflecting in our kitchen and living room all night long. We have had empty spools in the trees on our property and trash blown all through our yard. My wife and I intentionally built our house in the county, down a private lane, away from noise and traffic, so that during our retirement years, we could sit on our deck or in our home and enjoy the peace and quiet of the country, to watch the sunrises and sunset, to hear the birds sing and watch them feeding at our feeders. We never ever imagined that now, after we have finally retired, that we'd be sitting on our kitchen table, looking at our windows through our windows, staring at a parking lot, trash bins, and workers' vehicles, to have the headlights of the workers' vehicles flash in our eyes as we eat our breakfast in the morning when they come to work, to watch them as they empty their trash from the trucks while we eat our lunch, and driving up and down our property line multiple times, as was just the case yesterday. To hear the service vehicles sitting or idling in the morning for up to an hour while the dew and frost is cleared from the windows, while the materials and spool trailers are connected to trucks so they can go to work. This is what my wife and I are now dealing with, all because of someone who does not live in our neighborhood with his family has decided to operate a business out of his uncle's residence. And contrary to what they say, Jeremy and his family do not live in our addition. My wife and I are urging you to deny variance BZA 2434 and BZA 2128 because of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm
Speaking-
sorry, I'm not a public speaker, okay?
Nope, no problem. I'm speaking in opposition.
My name is Susan Stingley Salazar, and I live at 6324 Forest Grove Lane. We are the property adjacent to the south. On Forest Grove Lane, there are 11 residents, and I want to introduce you to them all. They all couldn't make it this evening. Kim and Dale Railing have been there 13 years. Mike Sims, 10 years. Ron and Brenda Hardesty have been there 30 years. Mike and Missy Oakley, 28 years. Mark Stahl has been there over 24 years. Teresa Matthews, over 19 years. My husband and myself have been there over 24 years. Dean and Mary Ellen Swinford, 22 years. Bill and Marcy Moore, 18 years. Charles and Lori Allison, 16 years. Lisa Zula, 10 and a half years. Notice that Jeremy DuBois is not on this list. He does not own property on Forest Grove Lane. 8 of the residents are opposed to the rezoning. And so let me tell you that Forest Grove Lane is a well-established group of neighbors. These properties do not turn over, no one leaves, and no one rents their homes. These are our homes. We have raised our children here. They know where they can come home to. We have spent countless hours and money investing in these properties, which leads to their increased value. We have planted trees, we've done landscaping, installed swimming pools, built workshops and pole barns. Each summer, we all spend many hours weekly making the properties a nice neighborhood. Personally, my husband and I have made many home additions because we have a son who uses a power wheelchair. Forest Grove Lane is accessed via a private gravel lane maintained by the residents. Every morning, the workers drive in, they take their work trucks, they drive out. Then this happens in the evening when they return. They drive like they are coming and going to work. They're not invested in the property and they don't know about maintaining it and the cost incurred to do so. The road is not wide enough for 2 vehicles to travel at the same time. And they don't have the respect to wait at the end or to wait in the driveway if someone is actively in the lane, which means that we're driving in the front of the properties of the other residents. They have left the flashing strobe lights powered on the vehicles overnight so that we have these flashing lights in our bedroom windows all night long. And in doing that, then they come the next morning and the cars need jumped because the batteries are dead. So they're out there making all of this noise and racket in the early hours of the morning. We all moved away from the city to get away from the noise and the traffic on the road. Living right next door, I can guarantee to you that Jeremy does not live at that property. His uncle, I believe, Mark, does live at the property and drives a separate commercial vehicle that he uses for his business. The changes that have been made in Mark's property in the last year have decreased not only the value of his property, but also the value and the aesthetic of the entire neighborhood. That large dumpster that's sitting in front of the house, those large wooden spools that are scattered all over the backyard, along with the broken down vehicles, the side yard that has now a parking lot there. And my husband was home yesterday. The pictures that were taken were yesterday. I don't know whether they paid someone to come and remove those spools, but that was just done yesterday at the property. All of the 8 of the residents, we want our neighborhood back. We want both of the items, BZA 2134 and BZA 2128, denied. This is a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name's Mike Oakley. We live directly across from the house 64 Forest Grove Lane. And Ron and Susan's pretty much covered everything I was going to cover, so I'm not going to repeat that. The only thing I would like to add is when my wife and I are sitting there watching TV or we're sitting on our porch, all we see is all these commercial trucks across the road. That's not a good sight to look at when you're sitting out there trying to enjoy your evening. Also, we're on the east side of the road, so we have issues with the dust from just local residents coming up down the lane, let alone having these trucks and their personal vehicles up and down lane 4 times a day as well. That just causes more dust. And like I say, this is a private drive that we as owners have to maintain. We have to pay for that ourselves. So they have no issue with running up and down the lane. And as Susan stated, Jeremy Du Bois does not live at this address. This is the correct address, and I've issued pictures to BZA as well of his address, and I will give you his correct address. So my problem is that put this lot in and it's not within code. So when they got a permit to put this parking lot in, they should have been denied then, and we shouldn't even be here discussing this. So I'd like to deny the proposals on both of these because it's just running down our neighborhood and decreasing the value of our homes. Appreciate you guys listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Bill Moore. I live at 6315 Forest Grove Lane. I mean, they've covered pretty much everything. No sense in going over all that. It is an eyesore. You know, we have a private lane that we do have to put a lot of money into, at least every other year, if not every year. You know, it just seems kind of, you know, you want to live out in the country, you want to have a nice country home. I mean, I've been there 18 years, and this is just not the kind of stuff that I would like to see. You know, if it starts here, is it going to go to the next, you know, who somebody else buys another property, or okay, well, they did it this way, we're going to go ahead and do it again. And you know, what happens to your neighborhood? I've got a lot of money invested in my home, as Susan and Ron and Mike have, you know, there's a lot of us down there. We got a lot of money invested in the neighborhood, and we'd like to keep it a neighborhood, not not some kind of a parking lot or business. So I would like to see it opposed. I'm opposing, you know, my vote on BZA 2134 and 2128. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wanting to speak in opposition? If not, John, do you have a rebuttal?
Yep, just want to quickly reiterate our position that these vehicles are of similar size and scope as normal consumer vehicles. This will not undermine the general purpose of the uniform zoning ordinance. The structure of the parking lot was already there. Mr. Du Bois added gravel to it. So that's there wasn't a permit needed at the time. And so again, reaffirming our position, requesting that the BZA vote in favor of this and vote for approval on both variance and special exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board?
I have a question.
Robert.
Mr. Schrader, does Mr. Du Bois still state that he does live there? The neighbors have said that he doesn't. What is his position?
If you could come back up to the mic, please.
He has his own residence, but he does stay there with his uncle intermittently. So he lives there part-time, but he can maintain his own residence. So for the question of the board, no, he does not live there.
Some of the residents have alleged that, I guess, the spools and things have went on to the neighboring lot. Some of the pictures show that they were pretty close. Does this happen? Does it, Mr. Du Bois is running his business. Does this happen?
Yes, it is. So to neighboring lots, to the best of my knowledge, no, there are spools there. Before this, there were from time to time. That is not a permanent feature of his business, and that is not something we've requested under the special exception. So even if granted, the spools would not be allowed. The scope of the special exception, the stated request is to park the vehicles on the lot.
What are the hours of operation?
So he lays cable for a living. It's kind of determined on daylight. He generally keeps normal business hours, so kind of 7 to 5 roughly, and then in the winter when there's less daylight, it actually narrows from that. So does that answer your question, or
I was just inquiring. Some of them were saying that, with these blinking lights and in the morning hearing idling trucks. And I was just kind of wondering, what is there any emergency situations, or is it typically a 7 to 5 p or?
Yeah. And so in one of the feature of these trucks, these are, bucket trucks. So it's utilizing them there can be safety issues if you're using these without proper daylight, especially with bucket attachments. So that it's generally 7 a.m. to maybe 6 p.m. When I put that question to them, he said it's very, very rare that he's even back as late as 6 p.m. normally in a normal business day. We put the specific hours in the request.
It's not really a specific, it's just
daylight hours.
That says, given the nature of the proposed commercial contractor activities, any hours of operation, no matter how limited, would create undue negative impacts. Oh, that's not the.
That's not that would be the staff report.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong.
I don't know, I have it.
It's in some. Just out of curiosity, how many?
Yeah, daylight hours from March through October, and then 7 a.m. through 6 p.m. November through February is what I put.
Just out of curiosity, how many vehicles does he have?
Jeremy, how many vehicles are there? 3 bucket trucks and 2 service vehicles. Okay, so 5, 3 buckets, 2 service vehicles.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Hearing none. Only vote on the variance, and make sure you do not fill out make sure you have the right ballot, because we're skipping one here.
So we're going to vote on 2134 first.
Yeah, vote on 2134 first, the variance. And depending on the outcome of that, we will either vote or dismiss the special exception.
Seven ballots cast, 0 yes, 7 no.
So the variance is denied, which means that the special exception will have to be dismissed. And I'm assuming we need to vote on that. Please. I'll take a motion.
So I move that we dismiss BZA 2128 for the special exception due to lack of being qualified because the variance did not get approved.
I second.
Have a motion, a second. Any comments or questions before we vote on this? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So the special exception has been dismissed and will not be approved. And I believe Mr. Hiddle has something if everybody that he would like to bring up in front of the board. If everybody would like to stay that was involved in that case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So zoning enforcement was paused at the moment that the petitioner filed the petition. And so nothing happened while we were waiting for tonight's hearing. So now that the hearing is over, zoning enforcement will resume unless the petitioner completely ceases all business activity. So as the zoning enforcement staff, we would like guidance from the board as to whether or not a day, 2-day, 1 week grace period should be granted before it's expected that business operations completely cease from the site. So it would be helpful while everybody is here who has an interest in the matter, the petitioner, his counsel, remonstrators, and us as zoning enforcement staff, if it's known, should we expect that everything be completely cleared tomorrow, go out, re-inspect and start issuing daily fines, or should there be some minor grace period offered?
And I guess when you say that, you're talking about the vehicles and schools and anything related to the business would be off the property is what you're.
Yeah, the expectation at this point is that anything associated with the contractor, the cabling contractor, is no longer on site in any way for any period of time. So the question is, when does that expectation begin? Is it this moment? Will there be a couple days granted for them to clear everything out of there?
Does anyone on the board like to make a recommendation? Or would we like to hear from their attorney as to what they think first?
That'd be a good idea. I think we should
John,
allow.
would you?
Yeah.
On record or?
Yeah, on the record, please.
Could we have 2 weeks to get all the equipment, make arrangements to get them in a store in an alternative location and get everything taken off site?
I mean, to me, I think 2 weeks sounds reasonable. Does anybody have a problem with that?
I propose giving them a month, considering holiday time coming up.
Okay.
Okay.
A month's even better. Thank you. That'd be, yeah.
Would you like to make that a motion?
Suppose that we grant petitioner a month to clean up the site.
Okay.
Maybe we say 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Could I ask just one question? Since you've given him a month to do this, does this also mean that he has a month to continue his operations out of this?
We're not taking public comment at this time.
And then just to make sure it's out loud on the record, that would be January 5th, correct?
Well, today's
the 6th. There are 31-day months, January 5th.
January 5th.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank
They're
you.
granted 30 days to have the site in compliance. And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2135. Lu Man and Chai Kong Chang. Petitioners and owners are requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week for a maximum of 6 guests in an R1 zone. The property is located at 136 Creighton Road in West Lafayette, Wabash 18 Northeast, 23-4 with conditions, and I hope I got that name close to being right. You can correct me, I apologize.
I second.
I have a motion and a second, then we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. So this is a request for a transient guest house within West Lafayette city limits. As you can see from the image on the screen, it is an R1 neighborhood. The West Lafayette Intermediate School is just to the north. Grandview Cemetery is to the south. This request is for a maximum of 6 guests. From what we understand from the petitioner, the owners of this house are going to be out of town for 2 years. So they have placed a self-imposed commitment on themselves by saying that they are only requesting this for 2 years. They would prefer to use this as a short-term rental instead of a long-term rental for that time. Now, recently, many West Lafayette citizens, city council, and mayor have voiced concerns about the number of transient guest houses in the city. Their primary concerns were the availability of homes in the West Lafayette Community School Corp being available to rent or own for families with students. They argued permitting additional transient guest houses will increase the cost of homes and limit the units available. These concerns may or may not be valid, but the test that staff uses to make recommendations do not take these concerns into account. The recommendations of staff are based on the 4 tests outlined below, which are ordinance defined. They do meet all of those tests in our findings. So we are recommending approval with a condition and commitments. Those commitments being the standard occupancy as well as the single booking. And then the petitioner proposed commitments of no parties outside quiet hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And the special exception will terminate and operations shall cease at the end of 2 years. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Hi, my name is Shi Kang Chang, which means everybody is healthy. I'm a nurse, so God give me a good name. But I go by Karen, so you don't have to struggle with that name. I flew back from California last Friday night and then intend to talk to neighbors that the city gave us a list of who received a certified mail. We sent a certified mail about my letter explaining why I'm asking for a temporary or short-term to have my house as an Airbnb. Just I retired, and one of my goals is helping out because my profession, my nature, and this is my home. Excuse me, I forgot to mention I live in 136 Creighton Road, West Lafayette, yep. And I live in this for 36 years, and I intend to come back, and I intend I maintain my house, and I want to, during my absence, I request for 2 years. Actually, my grandson was premature and then now just turned 9 months old. And so I assume, which means he is about 7.5 months old. I assume I'll be there for a year, but depends on the other grandma. If she can come back from China, then I can come back right away. I have no hesitation to come back. Oh, and also when I live here, I volunteer my time. I work in Lafayette Transitional Housing to serve breakfast, and I volunteer at church, or join, I shouldn't say. I don't know much about handiwork, but I join Helping Hand to help out whoever church member needs something that I can do. Painting is one of my what I learned skill. So I want to emphasize, I want to come back, and in between, my husband, by the way, my husband living in Taiwan, he wants to come back too. And then during COVID, I have to be in California to take care of the first grandchild. So I rented out to a PhD student. Basically, she is fine, is a good renter, but I cannot, or I don't want to say negative. Basically, my yard, was very limited income. And so my yard is full of thistles. I have to come back and spend a lot of time and money and energy to take care of my yard. And then my house inside also need a lot of work. It's not just because with my limited retirement income, I can only and I don't want to overcharge PhD student. She happened to be also from our church. I don't want to overcharge. In other words, it's from my previous when I was absent, the first time I even rented out is not a good experience. It's not good for my house to be a responsible person, take care of my house, my neighbor. So when I heard my second grandson need my help, which was only about in August, I heard about it. So and then I prayed about it, and through church, I found out Lindsay is a very highly recommended and have been managing several Airbnb. And I met with her. She won my trust right away, very responsible. And when I'm in California, I interact with her because this was a shock for me about have to go through all this. My son supported me, said, "Don't worry, mommy, you go back and present your case." So he's taking care of the baby, and I'm here trying to present. Basically, I want to emphasize, this is my home. I want to come back. My husband in Taiwan want to come back. When he come back to Purdue, he give presentation or visit. And my son-in-law came in August because he's attending a conference at Purdue. So this is a property, is mine. I really want to appreciate just temporarily helping me out too. So when I'm away, I still have responsible person take care of my house inside and outside. Besides Lindsay, with Airbnb income, I assume, I don't know, this is the first time ever. I already have an arrangement. I have a church friend, and I will also pay her. She come regularly, at least once a week. She even told me she come by my house every day.
Ma'am, you just have a few seconds
Sorry,
left.
thank you. So what I'm saying is I really just seek empathy. I'm hoping to help me out. And also I would like to, if someone saying you need to have more than 30 days, I have no problem. It's basically when I'm away, someone can be responsible. Lindsay can help me to manage the property. And I have a responsible person take care of inside and outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
My name is Lindsay Plain, and I live at 2001 McCord Road in Valparaiso, Indiana. And I'm the appointed person that Karen has said for her co-hosting or taking care of her property while she's out of town. And although I do not live in Lafayette, I manage other properties and co-host properties actually in all different states. This is my full-time job. And so I take extreme pride in working with the people and their homes, and I want to ensure that they can trust me with their homes. When people have long-term guests, they don't always have people coming and going that are taking care of their home inside their home. They're trusting that the person, the tenant, is taking care of their home. When you have a short-term guest, you have cleaners that come in prior to the person staying and directly after the person staying. And as well as we have people taking care of her yard and things like that. The other measures that I put in place to ensure that quiet hours and parties and those kinds of things are taken care of, especially since I don't live right on site, is that they have to be 25 years or older and send a photo ID. They send me a picture of them holding their photo ID by email, so I know it's them with their listing. I also have a contract that is sent aside from Airbnb that has all of our house rules, and each guest that is coming has to sign it. I don't allow instant bookings, which means that I have to vet all guests and they have to explain why they're coming. I have exterior cameras around the house and at the front door. I also have a remote lock that monitors guests as they come in and out. So I know if they have any trouble getting in or if they need any assistance, I can actually unlock the door remotely as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have a cleaning crew and church friends that are all local contacts should I need someone to be on site immediately. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition?
My name is Jennifer Page. I live at 144 Creighton Road.
In the previous picture, you could see my house. I'm 2 doors from Karen's house. I want to preface my statements by saying that no one is questioning Karen's character. Okay, so we know that she's a good person. She's helping her family, which is something we all hope we can do. I know you're aware of the numerous concerns related to transient rentals among West Lafayette leadership and residents. We've heard repeatedly over the last several months at these meetings from city representatives, Mayor Dennis, our new mayor who begins in January, city council members, school board members, about the housing crisis we're experiencing in West Lafayette, particularly within the city limits and within the West Lafayette School District. Citizens are rightly concerned about the impact on our everyday quality of life, the cost of housing, declines in school enrollment, and safety in our neighborhoods. Regarding this case specifically, I'm going to talk fast because I have a lot to say in 5 minutes. Regarding this case specifically, there's several things to note about our subdivision, Riley Meadows. There are no through streets. Creighton Road's the longest of the 3 streets, and it ends in a cul-de-sac at my home, 144. Jordan and Wheeler Lanes come off of Creighton and also end in cul-de-sacs. There's a total of 29 homes. I believe all are owner occupied. Because there are no through streets, it's a very quiet neighborhood. We recognize each other and the cars we drive. Along the south side of Creighton, the homes back up to Happy Hollow Ravine, so they have no backyards. Children in these homes spend a lot of their outdoor time in the front yards. There are no sidewalks, so residents rely on each other to drive slowly and carefully on our 3 roads. It's important to note that bordering our subdivision to the north with no barriers, no fences or barriers between us is an intermediate school. That school has an enrollment of 545 children ages 9 to 12. There's a paved sidewalk on Wheeler Lane that allows neighbors to walk to the school property, and this sidewalk gets frequent use. Regarding BZA 2135, I'm requesting a no vote from this board. As you know, our neighborhood is zoned R1. It was developed and zoned specifically for single family, low-density housing as laid out by the Area Plan Commission of Tippecanoe County in the Unified Zoning Ordinance. The Unified Zoning Ordinance defines family as 1 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption, and not more than 2 unrelated persons living in a single housekeeping unit. To make a decision here to modify zoning rules for one homeowner because it is profitable and more convenient for her is a dangerous precedent to establish. Our neighborhood is exactly what was intended in an R1 zone, and all 29 homeowners purchased their home and paid for the protections that an R1 zone guarantees. Changing the rules is not only unjustified in this case, but unfair to every other homeowner. With what is the purpose of zoning if we were to routinely make exceptions? Exceptions to zoning ordinances create chaos in the real estate market, which we are already experiencing. The petitioner has cited in both her letter to neighbors and in her petition application that she received the support of neighbors in the cul-de-sac on Creighton Road. This is not true. Most of our neighbors, both in the cul-de-sac and surrounding homes, were not informed prior to Karen's departure for California that she intended to use her home as an Airbnb. I found only one neighbor, in addition to myself, who was informed that this was her intention. Support was not requested. It was a statement of fact. I'm going to be an Airbnb. Both of us requested that she reconsider this choice. I also point out the petition does not identify by name or address anyone with whom she claims to have received support. To further this point, I've collected petitions with names, addresses, and signatures from 32 residents of Riley Meadows. The petition reads as follows. We, the undersigned, request the denial of a special exception for 136 Creighton Road, BZA 2135. We feel a transient rental will have a material and lasting negative impact on other property owners in the neighborhood. The Unified Zoning Ordinance established R1 zones are for low density single family dwellings. Please vote no to this exception. I have those petitions and signatures I can submit with my statement to the staff. This is important. The petitioner
30 seconds, please.
The petitioner has used an Airbnb at 112 Sumac as an example of a successful Airbnb. This property is managed by the same host. It's a similar size home, but less desirable neighborhood. If you look at that listing at 112 Sumac, it's operated for 4 years, grandfathered. There are 126 reviews for this property, which is an average of 32 bookings per year, which means on average, a new group of up to 6 individuals checks in every 11 days. This is consistent with Karen's statement in her letter to neighbors that her home would be rented primarily on weekends a few times a month. 32 bookings per year, 6 new renters every 11 days. That's 192 different people occupying a single home
Seconds, so.
every year. I have so much more to say. Can I submit this complete statement to the staff?
30 seconds over, ma'am. Those are the rules.
Do you want the original signatures or copies?
Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Allen Smith. I reside at 148 Creighton Road. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband who could not be here this evening. I'd like to begin by thanking you for permitting me to have this opportunity to speak to you. I'd also like to thank you for the recent several denials that have been made on the West Lafayette side of these exceptions. I'd like to take this opportunity in my time to respond directly to statements made by Karen Chang, and her daughter Anna regarding this matter. I apologize preemptively. I am vehemently and passionately opposed to this, and as such, I'm going to just read what I have written. I also would like to say thank you to Jennifer for not only spearheading this community action, but also for eloquently stating the legal issues involved with this. In her email of November 27th, Anna Chang, daughter of Mrs. Chang, states that, and I quote, that she was born and raised in West Lafayette and moved to Madison, where she currently resides. By her own admission, Ms. Chang underscores the fact that she, the originator of the idea to turn the family home into a business, moved out to attend college and did not return. Moreover, and more importantly, her mother, the co-owner of the property, will be residing out of state for a period of no less than 2 years. Her father, whom I have never met, let alone seen, has lived outside the country for the past 15 years. And Ms. Plain, the Airbnb manager with whom the Changs are working, lives in Valparaiso, outside the neighborhood, the city, and the county. As such, no individual associated with or invested in the property in question is actually in the vicinity. Moreover, and perhaps more importantly, Ms. Chang, again in her own words, states that she has great memories of growing up on Creighton Road, hearing the energy and cheers from Ross-Ade Stadium on Saturday mornings, being able to easily walk to Purdue's campus with her family and meeting up with her friends in downtown Lafayette with a short drive. The experience which Ms. Chang describes is that of a child being able to enjoy the safety and security of a home in a cul-de-sac in a stable residential neighborhood in which all homeowners purchased and maintained their property in good faith. Ms. Chang had, by all accounts, a happy childhood because she lived in a home in a residential neighborhood, not a motel in a commercial zone. By converting her beloved child home to a transient housing and not a long-term rental property, she would essentially be depriving a family of the opportunity to enjoy the childhood she did. She would be depriving us, her neighbors, of the opportunity to enjoy the peace and the peace of mind of a neighborhood in which all of its citizens are invested, engaged, and responsible. In effect, she has all but said that despite her happy memories, now that she no longer lives there, she is concerned only with how she and her family can profit from her childhood home. Of all the letters and arguments made in support of the petition, and quite frankly, by individuals who have no vested interest in the matter, the most egregious act of hypocrisy is that committed by Karen Chang herself. Aside from the fact that she has made several claims regarding the relationship to her neighbors and her neighborhoods that are simply not true, i.e. that she spoke to several of us before making her petition and that she will consider not renting out property for Purdue events, Ms. Chang feigns consideration for her neighbors and neighborhood when it is only her own interests she has considered and with which she is concerned. Ms. Chang's argument that she will continue to be a good neighbor rests on the presumption that she has been one in the past, and even as she actively works to erode the fibers that bind us as a neighborhood, that she is one now. While her past relationship to the neighborhood has no legal bearing on the present circumstances, her recent actions as an indication of her future behavior does. In the present, Mrs. Chang has not been a good neighbor. Good neighbors do not abandon their neighborhood, leaving the city, the state, and the country. Good neighbors do not commercialize their properties, jeopardizing property values, affecting school enrollments, and inviting unknown elements. Good neighbors do not knowingly put their neighbors in a position of having to waste time, energy, and resources to defend their rights and privileges they already enjoy as owners of homes in an R1 zoned neighborhood. So no, Mrs. Chang has not been a good neighbor. As such, there is little, if any, indication, despite her emotional appeals, that she will be a good absentee hotelier. I'd also like to add that the city of West Lafayette has a particular problem in that we are in the backyard/front yard of Purdue University. It is an obvious and undeniable fact that the city of West Lafayette benefits from being a college town. The best way to support Purdue is not by allowing it to expand to a size that erodes neighborhoods and necessitates the conversion of homes and residential areas in order to accommodate an ever-growing student population and its intended visitors, but by maintaining safe, stable, well-cared-for neighborhoods that make it a university and a city to which parents feel good about sending their children. The strongest community is one that works together, not one in which one party prostitutes the other.
30 seconds.
I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Peter Goldsborough. I live at 156 Creighton Road. My wife and I bought our house in 1996. And for the last 27 years, we've enjoyed both our house on this quiet cul-de-sac that you've heard described, and also our neighbors, including the Changs. Until a few months ago, I was blissfully unaware of all of these zoning regulations. I had never had any cause to get involved with this. Now I realize that an important factor that contributes to our enjoyment of our neighborhood is that we are zoned R1 for residential use, single-family use, not for commercial activity. We never imagined that we would be living across the street. We live directly south from the Chang residence. We never imagined that we would be living opposite a commercial enterprise with an Airbnb going on, guests moving in throughout the year, day and night. In order to grant this special exception, I believe there should be some special justification. And while I sympathize with Karen Chang's circumstances, I don't see that her temporary relocation to California justifies allowing a transient guest house to operate in this quiet residential neighborhood. Very close to the middle school that you've heard about, and where apparently all of the neighbors are objecting to this exception. Requesting that this exception should be granted just because it's for 2 years is not a valid justification in my view. The implication here is that we'll only have to put up with this disturbance and disruption for 2 years, and after that, everything will go back to normal. I would prefer we stay with the normal we have now. At recent BZA meetings, and indeed at their first statements about this, we've heard about petitioners attesting to how we've got 5-star reviews for both the hosts and the guests. What you never hear are 5-star reviews from neighbors. Why? Well, Airbnb never allows that. Okay, so where do we get to make our say? Here is where we get to make our say. And I would hope that you deny this exception because there's really no justification for this in an R1 neighborhood. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening, Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. Again, this month, I'm going to relay a message from Mayor Dennis and Director of Development, Aaron Easter. Before I read it tonight, I just want to also add that instead of just regurgitating, the same letter each month, we are working on stuff to answer our own questions and expect some of those reports at the beginning of the year. So with that being said, members of the BZA, the growth we've experienced in the city of West Lafayette is incredible and an indication of many exciting new investments in the community. One of our key functions as local government is to ensure community welfare and prepare for growth, including housing growth. The recent Ready Greater Lafayette Housing Report anticipates Tippecanoe County will need an additional 11,079 housing units by 2030, placing 25 to 30% of that housing growth in West Lafayette. Today, only 30% of total housing is owner occupied, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. As a college community, we consistently experience challenges with affordability and access to housing. From student population increases to economic development announcements, housing is a constant concern. The city of West Lafayette has invested in bringing in more opportunities to have a relationship with research and expertise at Purdue University. We are highly concerned with the potential negative impacts of the lack of housing availability on the success of these high-paying investments in our community. Housing and schools are a key factor for many faculty and staff in deciding where to locate their families and whether to come to Purdue University and West Lafayette at all. We are currently studying West Lafayette housing needs to complement the Ready Greater Lafayette housing study, Again, expecting that back at the beginning of the year. What we do know is the easiest way to ensure we have available and affordable housing is to utilize our existing housing stock for resident housing. This is true for student residents and full-time residents. While we are not inherently opposed to transient guest housing, we do wonder at what point we cease to have citizens living in our community, at what level of housing loss do our schools suffer from not having students to serve. What is a neighborhood when you are the only owner occupied house on the block? When do we become negligent in protecting the welfare of our community? We question the prudence of allowing special exceptions in single family homes when we have an established and exhibited need for those housing types to serve their intended purpose. Respectfully, John R. Dennis, Mayor, Aaron R. Easter, Director of Development. And just reiterating, we'll relay this at the BZA 2135. Actually, I forgot the other one was canceled. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hello, I'm Bill Watson. I live at 160 Creighton Road, right next to Peter. I bought that property in April of this year. I've lived in Lafayette for a little over 11 years. We lived in University Farms. Before that, in a house we really enjoyed. I know you just turned down short-term rentals there. I have a friend there who lives there, who spoke in opposition to that. He does long-term rentals, several properties in town. So he has management that helps him with that. I haven't had the chance to meet Karen yet. But I'm sympathetic with the inconveniences she's trying to avoid. But to me, it seems more a matter of preference than need. She would prefer to have short-term rentals so she can have guests stay, her husband or her son stay in the house when they're in town. That's a preference. It's not a need. Long-term rentals, she clearly has been able to do that before. She was able to have a student there stay before. So to me, it's about issues of preference as opposed to the neighborhood and the quality of the neighborhood. As I mentioned, we lived happily in University Farms for 11 years. Our son was born here in Lafayette. Shortly after we moved in, we decided to sell that home and come to this neighborhood because it was even quieter with the cul-de-sacs there, even less busy. And our son could walk to the intermediate school. He walked to the elementary school, gave him the opportunity to walk the intermediate school as well as the high school, and gave my wife, who I'm also speaking for, Sunny Lee Watson, and I the ability to walk to campus for our jobs. It's a very quiet street. It's also a little bit of a tricky street. As was mentioned, Salisbury goes in front. There's only one street that comes in. Salisbury kind of curves on both sides. So when you're pulling out, you have to look to the right, you have to look to the left. Before you pull out. Takes a little getting used to, I've learned since moving into the home, that you have to navigate the traffic when you're turning in. There are no sidewalks. My son walks our dog in the neighborhood. He walks to school every morning. He will continue to walk to school every morning all through high school. He has a classmate from last year who lives 2 doors down from him. Another classmate at the intermediate school who lives just up the block. So it's a very quiet neighborhood. There's kids walking to school every morning. There's kids walking down from the school every morning, people walking their dogs. It's one of the reasons we bought there, was to have a nice, quiet neighborhood. Even if you have best intentions when you're turning off Salisbury, sometimes you have to turn quickly. And if you're not aware of how that street works, you might not be able to look out for pedestrians or for dogs who are in the streets walking in that area. I know when University Farms came up, a lot of voices spoke out against the impact transient housing could have in that neighborhood. I don't think any of the things that were spoken then don't apply to this neighborhood, if not even more. So I strongly urge you to vote no on this. Again, to me, it's a matter of convenience and preference as opposed to need. And we purchased this house. I've spent a lot of money renovating the house to make it the sort of environment that we want to live in. Peaceful environment, quiet environment where people can walk, see their neighbors, walk their dogs, go to school, and having different people in the neighborhood who aren't familiar with the environment, aren't familiar with how the traffic works every weekend, to me is highly undesirable and not why I moved into the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street. The similarities between the previous special exception to operate a special trade contractor and an agricultural zone. And the transient guest house special exceptions are noteworthy. People who live in neighborhoods don't want commercial enterprises operating in those neighborhoods. And so as you hear the questions before you tonight, it's very curious why some get approved in Lafayette with no hesitation, and in West Lafayette, they get denied. So the consistency to the public leaves us scratching our head. So with that, though, we have another petition, 159 signatures against this special exception that I'll read into the record. We, the undersigned, are opposed to allowing a transient guest house of 136 Creighton Road in West Lafayette. We find the proposed special exception to deviate from existing zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house to operate at this location will materially and permanently injure the other property and uses in the same zoning district and vicinity, along with subverting the R1 purposes of the unified zoning ordinance. R1's intent, as we heard, is long-term, single-family dwellings, not house hotels or motels. Our request to deny the special exception is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding safety, traffic, noise, lighting, and the current and future uses of R1 zone properties in the neighborhood. To prevent the erosion of our neighborhoods and to maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and families, voting against the special exception is reasonable and justified. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Morgan Furs 180 Creighton Road. I'm going to continue reading the letter that Jennifer Page started earlier, and I also just want to say I agree with these statements. So while attending these meetings in September and October, I quickly realized that the checklist used by the APC staff in evaluating transient rental petitions is an off-the-shelf format designed for multiple scenarios. It was not developed specifically for this type of exception. Therefore, staff is significantly limited when evaluating the appropriateness and desirability of transient rentals in our neighborhoods. Further, staff is not required or obligated to evaluate the potential consequences of their recommendations. In other words, there is no accountability for outcomes or impact. The recommendations of staff are based on the 4 tests. These tests are related to development standards like setbacks, buildings coverage, building height, etc., and the impact on traffic, lighting, and noise. Where the staff assessment gets into murky waters is with item number 3, which reads, granting the special exception will not subvert the general purposes served by the ordinance, as there would be no anticipated compromise to the health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the community. Is it possible for staff to accurately evaluate everything that would fall within these categories: health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the community? I would argue that the answer is no. I would argue that health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the community are compromised when a new group of transients move in to a home in our neighborhood every 11 days. I'm not certain how the APC defines health, safety, convenience, and general welfare, but perhaps we need to talk through some real life scenarios. I'll also add here that no one is checking IDs when transient renters check in. Lindsay has stated on the listing for her own home in Valparaiso that we will not be available in person for most of your stay. On some occasions, we meet the guests that check in or check out, but will notify you first. In addition, Karen states in her petition that her manager, Lindsay, and family members live nearby. Lindsay lives in Valparaiso, according to her website. This is at odds with the petition, on which she has used a rural Frankfurt address. Either way, she does not live in the community and therefore will be limited in her ability to monitor transient renters at 136 Creighton Road. The APC staff also does not address enforcement. Practically speaking, this is going to be left entirely up to the neighbors, which is a burden that we should not have to bear. Again, we bought homes in an R1 zone neighborhood. There were zoning rules attached from the start, and that protection is built into the value of our property. It cannot and should not be stripped away for the profits and convenience of any single homeowner. Enforcement comes at a significant cost in time and energy for permanent residents. Lastly, I'd like to point out that the 2 letters of support for this petition come from the Airbnb owner on Sumac, who states that the neighbors are supportive of her business, but fails to provide any names or addresses or testimonials from those neighbors in her letter. The other letter is from the petitioner's daughter, who is, for sentimental reasons, would like the convenience of being able to visit her childhood home in between her mother's Airbnb bookings. Along with the residents who signed our Riley Meadows petition, again, there are 32 of us, and the individuals who wrote in advance to the board, I request that you deny a special exception for 136 Creighton Road, BZA 2135. A transient rental will have a material and lasting negative impact on our property owners in the neighborhood, so please vote no. Thank you. I also want to make a statement for myself, which is that my partner and I are some of the newest members of the neighborhood. We moved in August 2022 under the assumption that this was a residential neighborhood. In that time, I have not seen nor met Karen, and we just don't agree with having this in our community. So.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good late evening. Good evening. My name's Dave Kusick and I live at 807 Elmwood Drive, West Lafayette. This graphic, which I've shown before, shows all the transient rentals in the West Lafayette School District. Please remember that the West Lafayette School District cannot physically expand. It is landlocked by other school districts. Presently, the West Lafayette School District showcases the best public school system in the state and is ranked 28th nationally by U.S. News. This is something the Greater Lafayette community touts proudly. With each approval of a transit and rental housing petition, the zoning board reduces the number of single-family homes available, which reduces the potential number of future students for our school district. As I've reported at previous zoning board meetings, the West Lafayette future student population is projected to decrease in the near future. And when you superimpose the lack of single-family homes available due to the increase in transient houses, the decline forecasted in the McGimmon report, which I've referenced before, steepens that decline. The result ultimately for the school system is a reduction of the state's appropriation to the West Lafayette School Corporation. I urge the school board to stop this cannibalization of the West Lafayette School District's single-family homes. You have justification to deny this petition under item 3 of the zoning appeals petition, where the zoning board is required to consider use of property, land, and structure with regard to the effect of property value, harm to neighbors, and its use to be consistent with the neighborhood's purpose. The purpose of the West Lafayette School District land is to sustain and grow student population base for the school system. Replacing single-family homes with transient housing directly and negatively impacts that purpose of the land use. The effect of property value is pretty clear to me. My property value at 807 with a mini motel across the street has diminished significantly. It hasn't grown with other property values where there aren't Airbnbs. The use of R1 zone land is for single family homes. Neighborhoods need neighbors, not transients. And like the previous speaker, I'm pretty appalled at the staff's recommendation for approval on these because the use of land, the property value, and use consistent with the neighborhood purpose are all negatively affected. And somehow, I think we need to get clarification on what the staff actually looks at and recommends. The new owners of these transient homes are not interested in education of our children. They are interested in making money. Tonight, I've presented again clear and what I think are valid reasons for this zoning board to deny these petitions for transient housing in the West Lafayette School District. The West Lafayette school system is in jeopardy of extinction. Do the right thing. Save our West Lafayette School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hi, Peter Moser. I live actually on Wheeler Lane, which is a cross street from Creighton. I've lived there for 20 years. I'm at 124 Wheeler Lane. I'm a neighbor to Karen and many of the others that have spoken already. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share a few things. What I'm going to share is about cars, traffic safety, and then just the strength of the neighborhood itself. And it's interesting, some of the previous speakers said, well, I've never even met this neighbor. That's because these are old school houses and lots. These are 50s houses. Mine's in 1959. If you don't want to talk to your neighbor, you don't have to, okay? But if you want to, you can. Having said that, my kids have grown up there. We've seen lots of families with children grow up there. And you need to slow down. You need to be careful. There's a lot of little kids there. And since Salisbury Street was narrowed with the latest change, that is a very difficult entry and exit onto Creighton. Okay, this is a fact. You need to try it yourself if you haven't, particularly to make a left out of Creighton onto Salisbury. You need a fast car and good reflexes to do that safely. And when it's rush hour, forget it. And all of the neighbors that live there know, don't try to take a left at rush hour onto Salisbury. New transient renters are not going to know this. They're going to maybe get in an accident. They're going to have us all stacked behind them. And while I'm sharing this, I want to thank Karen and Lindsay for coming to my house and talking to me personally. They've heard this from me. So she's made the effort to get out to the neighbors, but it's really kind of united us in opposition. And I feel a little bit of empathy for this team because you hear all the personal situations, but you got to do your job. I know that I grew up on Black Hawk Lane. I've lived in West Lafayette 48 years. My parents live about 3 streets away in Indian Trail. Also a cul-de-sac neighborhood, also was affected by zoning change. They put a transient house in across from my mom and dad's. They put a group home in right next to them. I'm telling you from personal experience, that ruins the neighborhood. It totally ruins the neighborhood. You would not want it next to your house. I understand her needs. That's a personal thing, but I don't even want to go back to my mom and dad's house. I would not want that house, even if I inherited it, because of all the cars. There's constant cars at the group home. There's strange people coming and going all the time. And it's quiet back there. That's why my wife and I bought back there. And, you know, I appreciate Karen's needs. I appreciate everything that's been shared. But we bought an R1 because it was quiet. And that's the way we want it to stay. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition, sir, if you could sign in.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. So vote no was my punchline.
There we go.
David Sanders, 324 Jefferson Drive, West Lafayette. I'm also West Lafayette City Councilor, sponsor of the ordinance in West Lafayette that had us join this process. Just 2 quick things. Number one is, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your diligence. I want to thank you for listening to the members of the neighborhood. So a lot of people are saying things and it gets the temperatures rising. I just want to calm things down and say thank you. The second thing is, a lot of people have asked, why do we have to go through this process over and over and over again? And there are just 2 words for that: state preemption. And so I want everybody to know that the reason we do this is because the state has told us this is the only way we can operate. And again, you're put in this situation. I'm sorry for that, but it had to be done. And that's what the state requires. So thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders? Speaking in opposition. Hearing none. Karen, would you like to rebut?
Well, first is I want to clarify that I did last Saturday, Lindsay and I walk around in sort of a rainy day to the neighborhood. And we got 2 signatures from the neighbor. So I don't know, I can submit to that or not, they support. I know we do have, include page, there are a few people have knocked on it. Again, I didn't visit every neighbor, I visit based on the list I received. And we visit based on it. And then some, it's marked on here, some are not home, which a lot of people are not home on Saturday around noon. That's when, is it? Around noon we went. So that's clarification. I do like to say, and I appreciate Peter mentioned about, yeah, it's a large neighborhood. And I have been a full tenure track professor in tenure, you know, how busy it is. You basically, it's not 24/7 job. It is, and plus raise 2 kids, and my husband's a full-time faculty. So I'm guilty. I should have visited all my neighbors, but I know I haven't. Okay, I know, God knows, I should have done that and make more friends, but I haven't done that. But that's not sort of my focus. If I come, I like to help out people. I don't like to just, I do visit my neighbor across the street, Mrs. Yorsh. I don't know if she's here or not, but just because she's out there. And then my next door is John, and she's outdoor, then I talk. But when they're not there, I don't, I don't like to knock on the door and visit, which is my sort of a Chinese background. It's not an excuse. I do need to make some more. In terms of my husband lived in Taiwan, he did come back. Not often, but at least a couple of years, except COVID. But he tried to come back at least twice a year. When he comes, again, busy enough inside the house, don't visit neighbor. Okay, so he's not on the street. Anything else is, I appreciate Peter's concern about traffic, which I was tonight, even coming here, I cannot left turn, I turn right. So with that input, we already agreed to put information into our guests. If they drive, they need to learn to turn to the right and detour to on the Salisbury, that street. Another thing is a lot of guests, based on what my interaction with Lindsay, is our guests most like people attend a conference at Purdue, or people's family people, they are attending a wedding or funeral or Christmas holidays. They don't have enough place. They rent this kind of short-term place temporarily for a family gathering. So my house in that neighborhood, we are Lindsay definitely isn't a high caliber people. It's not, it just randomly they come and party. So I trust Lindsay, and she had experience. She definitely screened everybody. She mentioned about IDs. She will screen everybody, make sure that, and then she also asked she will ask my permission before she then rent it out. So I have a say, no, I don't need to. Even like I come back or my daughter's coming or some, I will say, don't block this room. My husband is coming back from Taiwan, block this room. So we have a home to come back. So in a way, it's a preference, but in another way, it's really neat because my husband can come back. In the past is when I have that PhD student, when he comes back, I come back, just make sure I'm home. So he is not alone with that girl. So it is something like now he wants to come back. He just a block a week or even a month. He wants to come back to write his book. I don't have to rent it out. I hope that will help to explain some clarification. Any other questions?
We may have some in a minute. Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? Hearing none. You have a ballot. Make sure you get the right ballot. This is BZA 2135.
Seven ballots cast, 2 yes, 5 no.
Special exception is denied, and we'll hear the last case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2136, Cyrus Gerard, petitioner and owners requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week for a maximum of 6 guests in an R2U zone. Property is located at 505 South 3rd Street in Lafayette. Fairfield 20 Northeast 23-4 with condition and commitments.
I second.
Motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Great. Okay, so this property is at 505 South 3rd Street. Here on the zoning map, you can see it's in this yellowish area, which is a residential area just south of downtown. We're just south of Fountain Street on the South 3rd Street. I zoom into the area here, you'll see the structure, which if anybody has been by this structure, it is was formerly a church, and I will let the petitioner talk about the history of this property because it's pretty rich. But looking at the site and site plan, there is no on-site parking for this, and it never has had any. Going from a church to a duplex as it currently is, it was grandfathered, so no additional parking was required. Up to 6 guests are being proposed in this church. There are 2 units in this building. One is on the back of the alley and not part of this request. That's a long-term rental, more than 30 days. So we're just referring to the front part of the building or the sanctuary. Here's a little layout of the interior. So the front street shows you go up steps here, and I think there's a better picture here I'll show you. There we go. There's the front. Up to 6 guests are being proposed. There are some petitioner proposed commitments, like we've heard on others, of no parties and no guests, as well as quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. Staff is recommending approval with the standard conditions commitments and the petitioner proposed commitments.
Thank you. And we'll hear from the petitioner or his or her representative.
Hey, how you guys doing? Cyrus Gerard, 505 South 3rd Street. Hopefully this will go a little quicker. Last one. Yeah, so we purchased this property 2 years ago. My spouse is from here, born and raised, and her sister. We purchased the property. It was run down church. I think it had been closed down and shut down for running some illegal, drug rehab or something was going on. There was a bunch of different things. This place had been a blighted property for a long time. We bought it. Afterwards found out that it was actually the oldest standing religious structure in Lafayette, Indiana. It's built in 1840 and it's been moved, I think, 5 times before 1900. It's gone through numerous remodels, and last one was in the 1950s, I think, which is when it lost its accreditation. That's when they did the metal siding, and that's when it really kind of took on a bland look. We bought it, we remodeled it, and are currently re-registering it as a historic home. We live there. We also live in New Orleans. It's me and my partner and our 4 children. We had gone for a different transient guest home, I think it was, where if it's your primary residence, you have so many days. Well, we don't meet that requirement based on the city. So Gruffy recommended that we go to you guys. There, the city's in full support to do it as a transient guest house, which also frees us up for more than specifically 60 days. Their reasoning was we hadn't been here long enough. We just got our certificate of occupancy in August. It's a 2-year process. We replaced walls. We actually found the bell. You can see we opened the bell. That bell's from 1891. I'm sorry, 1891. We've done a lot. We're going to do more. The downstairs isn't completed. Our goal is really just to be able to rent the unit out. There's a lot of neighbors who were married there who want to be able to rent it and use it as a honeymoon, like to redo their vows. We had a big open house. A lot of city council came, and a lot of people that brought all their pictures from being married there 25, 40 years ago. I mean, it was pretty amazing. So we want to have that open to them. It also allows us to generate to not only keep the house in use so it's not sitting, but also for the time that we're not there, but also to utilize the funds to continue to remodel the downstairs. As we recertify now versus later, it's even more costly to remodel or change anything. There's more procedures and stuff, and we want to do that. As far as worries with the community, all of our neighbors in our area, well, we have some that are here. We've had lots of letters from people that you guys should have in your packet. They're all in support. We were very close with all of them. That's why we did the big open house that we did for the community, because we know how important the structure once was. When we first bought it, every day that I was outside, I had someone stopping me to tell me thank you for doing this property. And it was a pretty shockingly strange thing. I'm from Louisiana, I'm from New Orleans, and we deal with old home. Every home's ancient down there. So this was a really peculiar thing for me to see how close it was. What else? There's no backyard. There's no side yards. We don't allow any parties. There won't be. My private stuff is in there sleeping in my bed. So there will be no fraternity type things. We actually have to approve every renter. We would not have it any other way. There is no automatic booking in our system for utilizing Airbnbs. At least gives you that ability. Quiet hours. We have neighbors. We have a tenant in the back who will also be helping to manage. Her and her children live in the back, so 3-bedroom. And so they'll be looking for noise because while we do have fire rated walls and stuff, you can still hear. So there will be no partying. There will be none of that. One of the other owners of the home, my sister-in-law, is also right down the street, less than 3 minutes away. And our neighbors will have all of them have our phone numbers just to make sure if anybody's outside smoking, which we don't allow, anything. We're pretty strict, mostly because we put our life savings into this home. So this isn't us trying to build something to turn into some Airbnb money machine type thing. This is literally our house. And we do have other homes and other places that we travel, and we want to be able to utilize the property and not let it sit. So that's I think that's it. So
hey, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposal? Been a long night.
Hi, my name's Mary Finnegan. I live at 501 South 3rd Street. So I am, in fact, my house is sitting up there right next to the church. And I wholeheartedly approve this, and I would hope that you would approve it also. The church was falling apart. Right, when they say wall, they mean the wall, the brick wall on the exterior. But one of the things I want to point out is throughout this process, they always kept us informed, and myself and the neighbors, if there was going to be noise from the construction, or, they were coming there, they always cleaned up. And myself and my neighbors across the street, we kept an eye on the building while this construction was going on, because with the whole wall missing. And throughout this process, they have been very open with everyone on what they're doing. They hired contractors. They filed all the local permits. They've done everything they should do. And I believe they will do everything they say they will with the rental. And like I said, I have absolutely no objections to them doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you'll please sign in, please. Speaking in favor.
It's me, Raquela. Hi, guys. I've met a lot of you before, seen you guys around. I'm really jealous of Steve's game face during this whole thing. You're doing great, man. I'm here obviously speaking on behalf of myself. I'm the spouse. Cyrus is my husband, and we have been working on this house for 2 years, and now we're proud to call it our home. I'm not shy about the fact that we have other houses. When people say transient, I'm like, are they looking at me? Because we travel a lot. We both work for ourselves. He has a company in Delaware. We live in Louisiana. I travel all over. I'm a professional artist and contractor as well. So when we think about transient housing, a lot of times it's being used as a slur, but it's not that way from our perspective as people who use transient housing on our travels, and also who have homes where we welcome people to come and be transient guests in our own homes. We've never had any bad experiences. I've had short-term rentals managing them for other folks, as well as my sister and I have a shared home in Arizona. When we're not there personally, we bought it to be our vacation family spot for the holidays. Not this holiday though. We got the church this time. We do Airbnb it out. So I am familiar with the politics behind it, and I'm familiar with what is or isn't possible through Airbnb and short-term rentals. I've only had overwhelmingly positive experiences as a host, not just from my guests, but from my neighbors as well at my different places. So when Mary comes up and she speaks on behalf of me, it does mean something to me because it is a representation of the pride that I put into my properties and into my projects and into my actual homes. So I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to entertain our request today. I know you guys have had a long night, so I'll make it short. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Good evening. I'm Chandra Di Rosaria, sister of Raquela, sister-in-law of Cyrus, and I live at 504 Owen Street. So I timed it during a school zone, and I'm 57 seconds away from the home. That's how close I am at the corner of 5th and Owen. And when this opportunity presented itself, I was excited. I was also like, wow, this church is going to be a lot of work. And turns out it was. Here we are today, and it's been a really, really awesome experience to see how much work my sister and her husband have put into the property, put into investing, the small touches to get to where it is today, which is really what her vision was. And part of her being an artist, the cool thing is what she envisions is what comes to life. So I can see so many pieces of her in the way that she's designed, you know, the colors in the church, what the doors are going to look like, how they were reconstructed from rafters that were inside the church, like taking all of these historical elements and then being able to share it with people who appreciate it is a really cool thing about Airbnbs. The other thing that I will say about being a co-host with her, being a person who uses Airbnbs when I travel, people really seek out this kind of thing. Like, yeah, you can stay in a house, or you could stay in a train car, or you could stay in an old rehab church. And those things really do bring interest in the community, where people could stay at a hotel, or they could stay here and actually put money into the local economy, which I think is a cool thing about Airbnbs that get a negative word, and people are like, transient. It's not a negative term to have a short-term rental. It's not a negative experience to be able to use this or to share this with the community. So I like to be able to clarify that this really opens up a lot of opportunity, I think, for people to experience a lot of the really cool touches that my sister and her husband have put into their sweat equity here into the church. I have an Airbnb adjacent to my house on the other side of the alley. So if I go through the backyard and over, there's an Airbnb. I have rented that for my family coming to visit me many times. It's been wonderful because I can welcome them to my home, and then I can escort them across the street where they can go and they can bed down and they can, wind down, and I don't have to worry about preparing my own home for people to come visit. That's really the benefit of Airbnbs, being in some of these local neighborhoods. I know that person, I've rented from him when inviting people into my neighborhood probably 5 times at this point. And it's always been a really, really great experience for them. And then also for myself as the person who's using it. Just other things that I'll say, was mentioned earlier, Raquel and I were born in Lafayette. I've lived in Lafayette my whole life. I'm very, very intrinsically ingrained in this community because I care about it a lot. This space probably was not going to be occupied by a single family because it was a whole church. So being able to use it R2 was great because there's a family in the back for their family to have this amazing space is wonderful. But again, because of the circumstances of having the beautiful option of being able to travel, this is a really great way to keep the home occupied, not have it sitting there vacant. And we just really appreciate the time and you listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Yeah, my name is Eric Teal. I live at 12 Circle Lane Drive in West Lafayette. They call it West Lafayette. It's just outside. We've lived there for about 40 years. I've been in this community for, well, since 1960, quite a while. Living in various spots around Lafayette and West Lafayette. And watching it go through a lot of changes over time and keeps getting bigger. And in some ways, it's kept getting better. And I speak as a biased person. This is my goddaughter just sitting down, and I'm an unofficial godfather to the person next to her. And I've known them all their lives, obviously. And I don't want to add too much about the house, which if you've seen it inside and out, it's beautifully done. And a lot of people have been telling you all kinds of things about architecture and stuff that I don't know anything about. But I do know quite a bit about Raquela, and by extension, her husband, who I haven't known quite as long. And I just want to say that what they say they'll do, they'll do. I know it. I've known her all her life, and she'll do it. And if she really wants to do something, you do not want to be standing in front of her when she moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good evening. My name's Nicole Jenkinson. I actually live in Monticello, came down tonight. I'm from Lafayette, lived in Lafayette my whole life. And in my work, my community work in Monticello, this is exactly the kind of thing that we see that really activates so many aspects of community. I'm very proud of Raquela. Selfishly, I'm excited to see them have a place to land in Lafayette so we can see more of them. They add greatly to my life, but also to the community. And I love what they've done with the church. I am mostly unbiased because I'm not related or invested in the property itself financially, but I do want to just speak in support of this exception, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. Hearing none, anybody wanting to speak in opposition to the petition?
I thought we had an in favor person trying to get up here.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks, Terry.
Part of me just wants to come up and say, hi, I'm here in like support of this. I used to live in Lafayette. I got to help put together major events in the area, the maker fairs and whatnot. I moved to Indianapolis and actually need some place to land in Lafayette. So I would be one of the prospective renters. This whole family impresses me, and I know they're going to knock it out of the park. All they need is a yes, and this will be a wonderful addition to the area. I'm sure of it. I guess that's really all I have to say, though. Thank you.
Your name and address.
Beth Zimmerman, and my address is now down in Marion County. I'm at 4930 West Troy Avenue in Indianapolis. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hello, happy holidays, everybody. My name's Charles Mead. I live at 4930 West Troy Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana as well. But my kids back here live at 70 Hedgewood Terrace in Lafayette, Indiana. I've been involved with Lafayette, Indiana for about 5 years now. And I will say that having a property like this run by people like this is the refresher that Lafayette needs. Having them here, having their space here run by who they are is going to draw business to Lafayette. It is going to stimulate the community, and it is going to help show people exactly what Lafayette is all about. So if you guys say yes to this motion, I can agree that you will be pleasantly surprised. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor. Last call. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street. Well, it sounds like this one actually is somewhat celebrated in the neighborhood. And so in that spirit itself, however, it is in an R2 zoned area, which has its intention to be long-term single-family and multifamily dwellings. So for that reason, I have to be opposed to it on principle regarding the zoning itself. So I'll read the petition into the record. We, the undersigned, are opposed to allowing a transient guest house at 505 South 3rd Street in Lafayette. We find the proposed special exception deviate from existing zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house at this location will injure the other uses in the same zoning district and vicinity and subverting the R2U purposes of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. As I stated, the R2U's intent is long-term, single-family, multifamily dwellings, not house hotels or motels. And denied a special exception is based on using the R2 zone properties for that spirit to prevent the erosion of the neighborhoods in that regard and maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and families. Voting yes, the special exception is reasonable and justified. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Hearing none. Do you like to rebut? Okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
I have a question for the petitioner. You spoke a lot about the building, and it does sound very unique. However, inside, do you happen to know what is the gross rentable space of, that will be offered for this Airbnb purpose? Is it split off into bedrooms? Is there a
It does.
full-fledged kitchen? How is, oh,
Yeah.
it's right in front of me. I guess.
So when you come up the stairs, when you come in, you can go downstairs to the unfinished basement that we're currently remodeling, but we had to kind of have to replace an entire wall. We had to build a hole in that one. So as you go up the stairs, on your left is the master bathroom, and on the right will be a bedroom. Then you have the main chapel area, which is
Dining room and living.
yeah, dining and living. And then there's some stairs as you go across up into where the stage was. The left would be a kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and if you go with the own entry door. And on the other side, you would go in and there's another through the stairs, there's another bedroom and bathroom and another entryway. Exit coming out. You can see sidewalks on the top and the bottom. On the bottom there, if you were to walk on the side, you would see the neck building, which isn't actually on this drawing, which is the 3-bedroom apartment. That is, it's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. The whole property size was 5,700 square feet.
The footprint of the property.
Yeah, and I think that
The interior usage of ours is significantly less. It's like 17 something.
yeah. So maybe 1,800 square feet. It's a nice, beautiful, large thing. We yeah, 3 bedrooms, 4 bath right now. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with the bottom once we get there. But right now it fits perfect for the kids. They all love it. They have their own little areas. They don't have to look at each other, which is great when you hit those preteens. So, and so that's it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just
Gary?
as we have had, just a question for comment for the board, as we have in the past, sometimes when a case is made because the owners are committed to this and they're going to manage that, we put a condition on there that this would cease if ownership changed or management changed. I just didn't know what the board's thought was on that condition, or if the owner had a comment on that. Just tightens it down a little bit that change zoning and then years from now you're no longer invested in it. and someone else is.
Anybody have any comments? Could be
If it's not, and if it's not utilized, right, within a year.
Yeah, it just goes along with that. So, yeah. Is that objectionable to you?
Yeah, oh, no, we don't.
Okay. So I will make the motion. I move that we add a commitment to the special exception approval. The special exception approval ceases to be valid if ownership or management changes.
I second.
Have a motion and a second, and just verify that that's agreeable to you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Any comments or questions on that? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? To that condition or the commitment has been added. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
Seven ballots cast, 7 yes.
The special exception has been approved. Any administrative matters?
No, sir.
I guess I've got one and would like to thank Michelle for serving on this board. I believe this is your last meeting.
Great.
Yeah, have fun on the West Lafayette City Council.
Steve, I would also like to say that I appreciate what the staff does. I know that there were some comments questioning what they do and how they function, but we understand the process and we appreciate everything, the effort that you guys put forth, the time that you put into this process, and it is truly appreciated.
Thank you.
I second that.
I agree with that as well. Thank you, staff. Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. And I'll take the last motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.
So guys.
Michelle.
Yeah. Like thought about that. I was like, oh, fine.
Do that again. He'll get you. What's that? You know, I think we will. Yeah. Speaking of.